I'm flattered by that. Because
anybody that uses the internet, or at least has heard about the internet, knows about Google. This is because it's one of the largest search engines in the world as of June 2000. Believe it or not, this massive search engine has over 1 billion searches every day. But if that sounded like an interesting fact to you, wait until you hear these other shocking facts about Google. It was inspired by math. Today, Google is a normal word to pronounce and frequently used in our day-to-day life. But if you think about it clearly, it sure is an unusual name to call a company. If you get to know a bit of history of how the name was created, it will start to make sense. Google was originally inspired by goggle, which is a mathematical term. This term is used for a number that starts with 1 and has 100 zeros after it. The reason why the company came up with such a name was to represent the main purpose of why they were creating the search engine in the first place, to provide endless amounts of info. Goats at Google headquarters. Yep, you heard that right. There's actually goats at Google. But once you start scratching your head as to how a goat will manage any sophisticated thing that Google requires, they only serve as an environmentally ethical solution. Google had wanted to make their own impact on the planet, and for this, they thought of keeping goats around their headquarters. So rather than having to hire machinery to be able to keep down the lawns in the front and backyards, they've got goats to do it for them. Google employees have also claimed that looking out the window and seeing goats eat grass is surprisingly calming. Google finds its employees through their own search engine. Google sure has a really weird way of hiring new employees for their company. Interestingly enough, Google doesn't allow people to contact them with a CV or an application. Well, you can do that, but they will most definitely not respond. This is because they uniquely hire their employees. For this process, they use a web tool called foo.bar. What this web tool does is that it looks at what terms people use when they search online. Google looks forward to people who oftentimes use programming keywords in their search bars. A good example is the word Python, which is a quite popular programming term. So, if you want to get hired by Google, typing programming terms in its search bar will probably have Google knocking at your door. The reason Google uses this kind of method for hiring people is that other methods that they used to put in practice before simply didn't work. GPAs and test scores were proven a worthless way of hiring people. So, now this huge company is moving away from the traditional hiring process. In fact, 14% of Google employees haven't attended college. The death benefits Google offers are outstanding. Even though Google employees are told to work as hard as possible, they are paid with hefty bonuses and a very pleasant working environment. As of today, there's almost 50,000 people that work with this ginormous company, so it comes as no surprise that Google employees come from all corners of the world. In 2004, when Google went public for the first time, many of its workers became millionaires instantly. Apart from that, Google also encourages employees to spend 20% of their time in the office working on their own personal projects, as well as various ideas, rather than focusing solely on Google. But another interesting perk that Google gives to workers is an outstanding death benefit. So, if a Google employee passes away while he is currently working for the company, their partner will receive 50% of the salary for 10 years straight. But this isn't the only way that Google looks after its employers. They also take care of their children of the employees who passed away. If an employee passes away, then all of their children will get $1,000 a month each up until the age of 19. This is the main reason that Google was considered one of the best companies in the world to work for, according to Fortune magazine. The founders of Google are the only people in the world that can land their private jets on NASA. Being rich does come with its privileges. Both founders of Google are multi-millionaires. Their extreme level of wealth just means that they can afford things that normal people only dream of having. From living in the most luxurious homes in the world, to having a garage with over 20 sports cars, up to having their own private jets, Google founders are sure enjoying their life. While this lifestyle is something only a few people can afford to handle, the founders have also had their personal runway at NASA. This makes them the only people in the world that are permitted to land there and not get arrested for it. The first Google Doodle was originally a burning stick man. The colorful logo of Google is one of the most recognized logos in the world, and this is all by looking at it regularly. But if you've been using it throughout the years, you might have noticed that the logo gets frequently updated. With each passing day, new doodle designs headlines are introduced to inform users about special events, holidays, or even global issues that are currently happening in the world. But believe it or not, the first logo that was a doodle used by Google was a Burning Man stick. Now, that might sound a little odd, but the reason the founders of Google chose this logo was because during that time, they were both in Nevada participating in the Burning Man festival. Both founders explained that the doodle logo was a way to represent that they were currently not around to resolve any technical issues as they were out of the office. The Burning Stick Man Google Doodle was designed and developed for the first time on the internet as of 30th of August, 1998. Over the next 20 years, there have been more than 1,000 Google Doodle updates, depending on the occasion. The company owns every misspelling of its name. Google's one of the most frequently visited websites across the globe, so it comes as no surprise that thousands of people have tried to set up a similar name on their own website. Of course, the name cannot be exactly the same, but it could have a different spelling, or maybe with a similar pronunciation. Many websites have tried to do this to be able to take much advantage as possible from the people that type in Google incorrectly, and oftentimes this has caused confusion and has taken the traffic from one site and generated it to another just because of a Google typo. In order to prevent this from happening, the company's come up with the solution to buy and own every misspelled Google name. However, they've not only bought misspelled domains, but also domains that can ruin their reputation, such as GoogleSucks.com. The founders almost lost their company in 1999. Sometimes they're founders of successful businesses that blow up, usually find them too hard to handle, and end up selling the company. This also happened to Paige and Brian, who were the founders of Google back in 1999. After they set up such a successful business, they were in hopes of selling it for $1 million to a company called Excite. But luckily for them, Excite turned down that offer, and the founders of Google decided to keep the company. Ever since then, the value of Google as a company has increased more than anyone could have ever imagined. Now, it costs an average of $300 billion, so it's most likely that Excite mourns the fact that it turned down such a great deal. 16% of Google searches have never been typed in before. Google tracks searches that are typed in by people when using the internet. You certainly have noticed that as soon as you start typing something into the search bar, other predictions will appear below, and voila, you find what you need. This happens because the search engine begins to predict what you might be looking for on the web, and that's normally already been typed before by other users. This option appears every single time that you search on Google, but surprisingly, 16% of all searches done in a day are completely new. This means that nobody else has ever searched for them before. Considering that there's around 2 million searches a minute, 16% is a very big number when it comes to new searches. Google Earth isn't developed by Google. Another tool that is extremely popular is Google Earth. Just by typing any address in the world, you can get a clear view of its location, all thanks to Google satellites. Whether you want to enjoy the street view of the location, view it in a different format, or zoom in and out, this tool allows you to do almost everything when it comes to navigating around and exploring the world. A surprising fact is that Google didn't originally come up with the idea of Google Earth. It didn't even develop the technology to let people use the word just by using the app. The company that originally came up with the idea was actually called Keyhole Inc. The tool was originally called Earth Viewer, but Google loved this idea so much, they bought the company in 2005 and made it theirs. Google owns a lot of companies. If you think that Google is just, well, Google, you're wrong. It's much more than a search engine, as the company is a huge tech corporation that's involved in the development of other tech. Although the company has needed to acquire a huge amount of success to reach that size that it currently is today. Google has even started acquiring a lot of companies since their first year of operations. In 2010, they began taking things a bit more seriously and began buying other businesses that resulted in profit. Now, Google acquires around one company per week and owns various companies like YouTube, Android, Waze, and countless others. Do you think Google's success was just luck, or did the founders of this company work really hard to get there? Tell us what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and until next time guys, we'll see you later.